Oh, okay. Hello, my name is Sophie Manosalva. For my first walkabout, I went all the way to this little town called Pesaro, Italy. While I was there, I attended and also worked at a school called S. Savioli. I attended about 4 baking classes, and then I taught 3 English classes. That was not originally my plan, but the English classes weren't my plan. I met a English teacher there who was just absolutely wonderful, and she invited me to just sit in on some of her classes and talk to some of her students and maybe personally tutor them. And then that turned into me making lesson plans and teaching them games and studying them with one-on-one with them through English and teaching them other things. And then I traveled about 6 hours every single day to round trip. And then at the end of my walkabout, about 7 weeks into it, I just took a week and went to Germany through Switzerland. We had a foreign exchange student when my oldest brother was at Linworth, and she just recently got married, and she wanted me to go visit her. And if she had asked me while I was in America, I would have politely declined, made an excuse like, oh, I'll just maybe someday, or I'll visit eventually. But since I was already in Italy and it was only about an 8-hour train ride, I just hopped on a train and went there. The school system is set up a little differently in Italy. Here, in America, we go to high school and we get general classes, and then we go to college and we study something very specific. But in Italy, they study something specific in 5 years of high school, and then go to college, get their general classes out of the way, and then go find a job somewhere. And so I attended, it was technically a catering school. It was in a little town called Riccione. It was about 3 towns over from where I was living, and it was not at all what I expected. I thought I would be working with people, especially since they said catering school, I thought I'd be working with people going to college or my age or older, and I was very excited about that. But when I got there, I was working with people anywhere between the ages of 14 and about 19, which was an experience for me to learn how to work well with others and work with people who were significantly younger than me, and still learn from them and still teach them things. My plan was that I wanted to go there for the culinary experience. I wanted to get some more recipes and some new techniques under my belt so that I could have a leg up on the competition when I go to culinary school in the autumn. And I studied under 2 specific people for culinary, Linardini and Caramia. Funny story about that, it was my last day and I had finished all my classes, and my English teacher invited me over to her house and she made pasta for me, and I was like, okay, that's fine. And then she kind of threw something out there about Lunardini's newspaper. I had to stop and I was like, okay, wait, can you expand on that a little bit? Apparently Lunardini has her own TV show, her own magazine, her own newspaper articles, and she's very famous. I did not know that until after I had already finished her class. And then I come to find out that Caramia is actually like a 5-star chef in Milan. So yeah, I went there for the culinary experience, and I got the culinary experience from the best people I could have in Italy, and I wish I had known that from the beginning, but it was nice to see these people and treat them like I would treat a Linworth teacher or a Thomas teacher, and then kind of just ignore the fact that they were famous, ignore from ignorance, but still ignoring the fact that they were famous. It kind of helped me learn more from them and not be starstruck. And I also wanted experience for the future. I wanted to know what kind of baker I wanted to be, who I wanted to be as a culinary student, and what style I wanted to portray in my food. And then I also wanted to discover who I was as a person. I thought, being in America, we grow up with the same people, we go to school with the same people, and sometimes people portray us or recognize us as something that we don't feel like we are. And I wanted to separate myself from that, about 4,000 miles, and get to know who I was without people just considering me or thinking about my personality in a certain way. So I wanted to separate myself so I could figure out who I was without those preconceived notions. My daily life started at about 4 a.m. and it went to about 7 p.m. It was a really long day for me, but most of it was traveling. I had to take a bus to the train station, take a train to Riccione, and then walk about 1.5 miles to school, and then change in my uniform, bake for about 5 or 6 hours, and then do it all back and get home. And one good thing that came out of that is I learned how to communicate without using my words. I could understand some Italian, but I just couldn't respond. It was very hard for me to just, say hello in Italian. So it was really hard to get around, but after I learned how to communicate using my hands or using as little words as possible, but still, get my point across, I was able to travel easier and ask more questions and get to know more people and more strangers. The hardest part for me was that I was very homesick. I'm the kind of person that I'm excited to go do new things. I'm excited to go to summer camp and spend time away from home. And I got about 3 weeks into my walkabout, and I was like, okay, this is exciting. I'm ready to go home. And then it hit me. I still had 5 more weeks left. That was very hard for me because I just suddenly got very homesick, and I missed everyone. And I missed Chipotle. Oh my goodness, did I miss Chipotle. That was the first meal I had when I came home. I got off the plane, got in my car, got Chipotle, and then went home. And I missed Americanized pizza. I mean, Italian pizza has this hype to be amazing. Donato's was a million times better. And oh my goodness, I missed English. I missed it more than I missed anything. There was this lady that came up to me at a train station, was like, I'm sorry, I don't speak Italian. Do you speak English? And I was like, yes. Oh my goodness, yes, I do speak English. And I'm a baker, and hearing English was the sweetest thing I've ever tasted. And I just wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared to be homesick. I didn't think I was going to be homesick. I thought I wasn't going to want to come home. But I was ready to come home after those 8 weeks. And I just wasn't prepared to deal with having, being that foreign exchange student. I know I've had a lot of experiences with having foreign exchange students either at my house or at my school. I just didn't know what it was like to be on the other side of that and actually be the foreign exchange student. That was a great eye-opening experience for me. So it was really important for me for my second walkabout to be very close to home. So I worked downtown at the Nationwide Plaza at a place called A Blessed Cookie Company. It's a small family-owned business, and I'll talk about how I know them later. And I wanted to get business experience because I want to hopefully open my own cafe someday. I'm going to culinary school, but after culinary school I'm going to be taking business courses. I want to open my own cafe or bakery someday, and then I studied under this lady called Dee Dee Tolbert. She actually worked with my mom about 24 years ago at Ross Labs, and a bunch of people, her coworkers, told her, if you want to open your own bakery, just do it. So she just dropped everything and opened her own bakery, and here she is 24 years later, and she's planning on expanding, and she's just one of the best business owners. She has a great business plan, and she has the loveliest customers. And I wanted to learn new techniques for baking. I love baking cookies, but I didn't know much about it. I just knew the traditional way that my mom and my grandma taught me how to bake cookies. And then I wanted to also be close to home. That was important to me. It was still downtown, and I live in Worthington, so there's still, that 20-minute gap, but it was closer than 2.5 hours away. My daily life in Columbus consisted of me going to school at Thomas and being in wind ensemble and, playing my instrument there, and then taking a bus to downtown and then baking for 6 hours, closing the bakery, and then coming back home on the bus, which was, it was an eye-opening experience to, learn the quota system. And then I thought it would be a great idea to bake at home. I don't know why, but I decided to own my own business on the side. Great idea. So, as a consequence of that, I had the most insane schedule. There was still class, and there was still baking, and there was still homework, and I had forgotten about that. Being in Italy, I was kind of removed away from homework, even though I was working at a school. I wasn't technically enrolled in the school, so I didn't have the homework, I didn't have the studying to do. Coming back home, it kind of hit me really hard, like, I still have homework, I still have concerts, and I still have to be a good student. I can't just give up on my schoolwork right now. I still have to graduate. And it was especially tough because on Fridays, I had to be awake at 3 a.m. so that I could open the bakery at about 5 a.m. downtown. And that was really hard for me, especially because I had a lot of concerts and I had states on a Friday. And so I would be working these 25-hour days or 29-hour days and then going home and just sleeping through my Saturday because I was so exhausted. Some days I wouldn't even get home until about 3:30 in the morning on Saturday. So I'd be awake at 3 a.m. and then I wouldn't get home until 24 hours later or even later. And that was really hard for me. But that taught me how to juggle my time. and how to use my time wisely and how to spread myself a little thinner, but still putting my all in everything that I did. My overall thoughts over everything, especially, in both countries, in America and in Italy, I wanted to learn how to represent myself well. I wanted, along with learning who I was as a person, I wanted that person to be responsible and to be confident and to have other people look at that person and not be ashamed to have them come over for a party or not be ashamed to have them over for dinner. And I wanted to be that person. I wanted to portray the best parts of my personality. I didn't want, to have a personality trait that I was ashamed to show off. And I wanted to be proud of who I was. I wanted to represent my employer well, especially in Columbus, since I was speaking English and I was actually hands-on with the customers. I wanted to take on her personality, and she's known as the Cookie Lady. And if you know her at the Nationwide Plaza, she's the Cookie Lady, or she's Miss D. And I had to be like her, and I had to be close to her personality because that's what the customers expected, and that's what I wanted them to expect from me. And when I pretended to be excited about cookies and baking 500 cookies and making dough, just 6 doughs a day, when I pretended to be excited about it, I realized that it made me genuinely excited on the inside to, bake 500 cookies. So at the beginning, I was like, I don't want to bake these. And at the end, I was like, I can't wait to scoop, 600 cookies or do this 60 cookie order. I actually got genuinely excited about it. And I wanted to represent America well. That was very important to me. That was probably the most important thing to me when I went to Italy. Other countries have this negative stigma about Americans being rude or obnoxious or not being well-mannered, and I wanted Italians to change their thoughts about that and show them that, there are grumpy people in America. There are people that will not represent us well, but that's not the entire population. There's people out there that are nice and sweet, and they're not gonna, just bite your head off, and then there's grumpy people in every country. And I wanted to learn how to represent God well, because when I was in Italy, I wasn't involved in a church because I didn't speak Italian. So it was really hard for me, but I would spend most of my times traveling reading the Bible or reading books about God. And I took notes and learned a lot about myself through Jesus. And that was exciting for me because, my faith is who I am truly as a person. And, if I didn't get to grow in my faith, then I couldn't really grow as a person. So that was really exciting for me to just be able to learn how to represent God better and learn how to represent myself and my employer in America well. All right, thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
What would you say was your biggest takeaway, baking-wise? What techniques you learned, or how to do it better?
Okay, well, there are about two things. I learned that I need to work out if I'm going to be a baker because I won't always have a machine. I had to hand whip whipped cream once. No, never again. Will I ever hand whip whipped cream? It took me about 20 minutes, and I started crying, and I was like, I can't do this. So I learned I need to be fit. Also, there was one time I went in, and my teacher came up to me, and he doesn't speak English very well, but he said, "You're going to make 10 cakes today." I was like, okay, when are they due? And he said, 2 hours. So I made 10 cakes in 2 hours. So I learned how to rush and still do my best. To not always have to take my time and be super nitpicky, because there are some things that I can't change about my baking or some things that I mess up with, but I have to just keep moving on. So that was probably my biggest takeaway with baking was, be physically fit, and then also how to manage my time well.
The baking in Italy, did you focus on, or what were you taught? Baking?
I focused on traditional Italian pastries and appetizers. One day I went in, my teacher just said, okay, you're going to bake 10 cakes today and they're due in 2 hours. So I did a lot of baking in bulk under a time limit, and a lot of traditional pastries and appetizers.
Thank you.
In Italy, were you actually in a different city? The train line, how many miles was that?
Oh, I don't know how many miles, but it was about 3 towns over. I passed by this town there was Pesaro was here, and then Catalico was here, and then there was a couple other cities, and then Riccione. So I had to like go through the cities on the coast, and there's actually a picture. Okay, so this is what my view was from the train. I just went through the hills, so I just passed by all the hills. I didn't have to go around them. That's actually a castle. So I don't know how many miles it was. It was just super long, and sometimes the train would get there in about 20 minutes, and sometimes it would take about half an hour. So it just kind of depends on who's driving the train that day. Yeah?
So I have two questions for you. One,
Of course.
some humorous and one serious. So what was the first Italian delight that you ate or you prepared upon your return?
When I came home.
That's the most important, right?
Yeah. Huh.
I have not had anything Italian.
Well, I made the things that wait, so there was this one Italian cookie that I love, and I've made them a lot, and then but they makes so many of them that I always have to take them to other people because my mom doesn't want them around the house because we're just gonna keep eating them. So I made those. They're the clothespin cookies. The clothespin cookies are my favorite, and they're very delicious. And your second question?
Second is a little bit more serious question. Maybe you can't answer this because of the language barrier, but certainly the Italian people have been really asked to shoulder a lot of burden with the refugees coming across the Mediterranean. Do you have any idea the average person on the street how they're reacting to that?
They tried to ignore anything that was going on that was hard to talk about. One thing about Italy is that they have a very, I don't know, New York City kind of mindset where they won't talk to you, they won't look at you if you're just on the street, they'll just pass by you. So getting any kind of political answers was a little hard because it was uncomfortable and they don't talk about uncomfortable things. But they did talk a lot about their economy right now, which is really struggling. So I think they're frustrated because their economy is having a lot of issues and there's not a lot of jobs, and nobody can get a job. And so if you have a job, you're okay. But teenagers, like I couldn't have gotten I was there. My cousins couldn't get jobs while they were there. So they're really struggling finding jobs for everybody. And that was their biggest worry with everything. Okay.